Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, the most valuable hour of your day. I'm Michael, the MCCC for today's adventure, and today's show is Visioning, taking the first step toward your vision, continuing on our own Tim Flynn's Foundations of Self-Discovery. Be aware it's Thursday. This is the conclusion of this week's topic. And also, we're going to cover our weekly logical fallacy.
That's
So,
right.
with me today, we only have one other host, and that is Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator. Agnieszka, how are you?
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. We can handle it, just the two of us, can't we?
I hope so. I don't know. We might have some quiet time, but we'll
Yeah,
try
we'll
and do
just
our
sit here and stare at each other for like 20 minutes. Like every time somebody else will talk, we'll just like
best.
wait it out and then we'll. No,
No,
no, I don't
we'll
think so.
wait for a ghost to come in or something.
No.
So for those of you that are viewing us live, if you have questions or comments, this would be the time to do it because we got a lot of space to fill with just me and Agnieszka.
We could talk
So
for hours, hours, years.
I'm sure we could. So the conclusion of this week's topic, taking your first step toward your vision.
Yeah.
Agnieszka, you want to give us some of your input on what that might mean? Or?
So, the one thing that I've studied before is visualizing the future and creating your future, taking an active role in creating whatever your future will bring, right? Not just passively waiting for things to happen in your life, but actually actively taking an active role in creating whatever's next. And in that, I for years now, I've been looking at the different elements that go into creating the frame of mind that allows me to move forward and have faith in the fact that something will that I want will happen in my life somehow, somewhere. And so the number one thing in manifestation or in creating your reality or whatever, the number one thing is to not really worry about the how so much. Like if you're really going to listen to your intuition, there's no need to worry about, oh, how am I going to get there? How am I going to do this? The most important thing is to take the first step into take the first step in the direction of your dreams, take the first step in the direction of your desires, take the first step in the direction of your fulfillment. And it doesn't even have to be the step that's going to take you to the next step, to the next step, to the step, next step. It just has to be an action that shows your willingness to move towards whatever you want. Sorry. No time to
Yeah,
mute.
I definitely consider taking action as the magic, as creating the magic. It's like casting the spell or hitting the whatever that stick thing is that you use to do that magic wand. Taking action is the magic wand that makes things happen. I definitely believe you're right that not always knowing exactly how things are going to play out. Um, those aren't always really necessary. But in most of those cases, it is a situation in which you need the help of other people or need the interaction of other people. And those are where you can get the how, and maybe they know how, where you
Yeah,
don't.
yeah, and we've been sort of building up to this over time, right? Like we started a few weeks ago with this self discovery series, right? Where we talked about the different ways to get to know yourself. Because if your desire or what you want to create is not compatible with who you really are, like you're a perfect example. You're a person who is very approachable, who is very helpful, who is very elevating to others. Yet you signed up to be a soldier at one point in your life, which wasn't congruent with who you really are in the core of who you are, right? Like maybe it's true for some people, but it wasn't true for you. So that way, self discovery, had you had a chance, the opportunity, or the education to do some self discovery experiences before that happened, perhaps you might have chosen a different career for your first career, right? Perhaps. But
Absolutely.
then, I mean, we can argue that this was the experience you needed to become the person you are today.
Yeah, and I think a lot of cases that's very true. Sometimes when we take action, we're taking action in the absolute wrong direction where we really want to go, but you don't really know that until you actually do it and find out, oops, that
Yeah,
was a
so if we
mistake.
back up a few weeks ago, we did all those exercises for self-discovery,
Mhm.
right? So that's the first step, to know who you are, right? And the second step would be to create order, clean your room inside your head, do the clean your room thing, but really figure out what you want, where you're going, how you're going to get there. Like, what's your thing right now that you're working towards, if you want to share?
Well, I've got
Thing.
the Anarchapulco experience. The AEX 2020 is my big project at the moment, and that is transpiring as we speak, and it is a
So
bit
you're
of a
producing that.
stretch.
You're producing that event. You're the engine behind that event, right?
Yep,
And that's congruent with who you are, right?
definitely,
So,
absolutely,
there's benefits to being a little bit older. You can find those projects that really make your heart sing, right? So, okay, so
absolutely.
so we figured out who we are, and this next step was to find the thing that makes your heart sing. But then sometimes it seems so far, far away that you could never reach. You could never get there, right? So then what we have to do is put our thoughts in order, because the thoughts are what is behind our words, which is what's behind our actions, right? So if we put our thoughts in order and start thinking about it as perhaps attainable, or possibly attainable. If you don't want to say attainable, that's cool. It may be, there is a possibility that I could possibly achieve my dreams. Is there a possibility
Well,
for you?
well, I think there's more than a possibility. I think it's almost, but it has to do with like we getting in harmony with ourselves in such a way that we just radiate the energy that is our purpose, and that becomes so clear that other people can see it too, and then it becomes really possible. But I think like as much as most people have been programmed and conditioned and beat down into what the low potential area that they reside in, that yeah, it seems impossible. I mean, it seems like climbing Mount Everest or something. It just isn't possible. But it doesn't have to be that way, because it is, and that's why knowing yourself and kind of getting rid of all the baggage and all the other stuff that's kind of hindering us from actually seeing the true potential of who we are, that it makes it really possible, because then Mount Everest becomes like the molehill that we just step over, and then we
Yeah,
move
when I was
beyond.
younger, I had a lot of fears about future and about my capabilities and my ability to actually even support myself, even like earn enough money to eat. I had a lot of doubt and a lot of fear about it. And I don't know if it was, messages of the people around me who basically said, "Oh, it's beyond you. You'll never succeed," right? Or it's if it was something else. One of our listeners, Eric, says thoughts, emotions, and actions are what govern behavior. And it's true. So, as I was saying earlier, right, we went from self discovery, then to visioning, to creating that vision inside our heads. And now that we're at the end of our journey of visualization, we wrote down we wrote down we were talking about vision and mission earlier a little bit. We might have to come back and touch base on it another week. But just visualizing what we want and now taking the first step. Why is the first step so important?
Well, that's usually the hardest. I think there's a I don't know if it's Dan Aykroyd or Bill Murray. There's a movie where he's like the key phrase in it is baby steps. Just take the baby steps, and essentially that is kind of the way like for somebody that's a little bit you know uh, fearful of moving forward or trying, it is just like the little baby steps. You don't have to do too much. You just got to do a little.
And
And certainly that's
I
very
can't,
key.
I can't stress enough the power of intuition. The, the listening to yourself. Sometimes the messages or the instructions from that small voice inside seem to be so out of left field or ridiculous. Like I remember one time I had this strong feeling that I should join Toastmasters. And at first I was like, well, because I was sitting there going, what's the next step? What's the next step? I need to know what the next step is. What do I do now? Like, I don't even have a clear idea of where I'm going. What do I do? And then there was a voice in my head that said Toastmasters. Well, why do I need Toastmasters? I'm already a pretty good speaker. What the heck do I need Toastmasters for? But I decided, because I was on a um, journey of self-discovery, I decided that I will try it anyway. And I tried it, and it seemed to be working. So our listeners are saying that you are hard to hear. So I just turned you up over here a little bit, and maybe just make sure you speak to your mic directly.
All right,
And
I'll,
and
I'll
and
raise my voice a little. How's that?
yes, and please let us know if there's still problems with us hearing Mr. Nimitz. Also, your phone probably hasn't like a volume up button, so maybe try that too. Mr.
Well,
Eric.
you know how we do. You know how we do with this stuff. And I apologize for my audio. I would like to thank Adam. He did actually make a contribution towards my microphone fund, and shout out to Adam for making that happen.
Nice.
So I'm a
Awesome.
little bit closer to getting myself a new microphone. Honestly, I think I need a whole new setup. Because I did actually, we did try a couple things. I've got somebody here that's kind of an audio expert to some degree, and he gave me a little bit of a setup here. I tried earlier before we started the show and failed miserably. So we're trying to get our audio squared away, but it ain't there yet.
Well, that microphone kind of sounded like somebody dropped it in a cup of coffee, so that could be it.
Yeah, well, that's just
Anyway,
one of the problems that we've got to get through. That you just got to climb over. You just got to keep. There's a failure. You just got to keep climbing over it, and eventually you'll get there.
right. So, but okay, so let's talk about that for a little bit because it would be really easy to go, "Oh yeah, why doesn't he have a microphone? What's up with that?" But in reality, you've been on this journey of self-discovery for a few years now, really looking inside and you've walked away from your corporate career, you walked away from everything, you're living in the jungle, you're experimenting with like the good life.
Well, I mean, that's certainly, as I think about it, and as I've had some guests over in the past few days, and we talked about some different things, and I realized, I've done this more than one time where I've, kind of started off on a path, and I thought this was who I was, and then sure enough, that wasn't who I was. So then I had to make a turn. I had to do something else, and usually it was one in which it required a lot of willpower because you kind of get attached to the person that you are and kind of the way that you do things. And when it comes to like changing your life in a big way, sometimes you got to give up some of your friends. Sometimes you got to give up some of the things that really come easy. And it's not always that easy. I mean, when I left my corporate job, I was making a six-figure income. I had a couple houses and things were looking up pretty well for myself, but I decided, you know what? Do I really need all this? I mean, a lot of people that make six-figure incomes, they got to go into the big city, and you got to pay like 25 bucks a day for parking, so like giving those kind of things up, yeah, it's not too hard to give up paying 25 bucks just to park your car every day. But
25 bucks is
um,
cheap. I
oh
come
yeah, well,
I used to
this
live in
was this was
Calgary.
Chicago in the early 2000s, so it's probably like 75 now.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, you just got to kind of like say, you know what? I don't need that. I don't need the money, and I guess that's another thing is that, really a lot of people, like, they think they have security in life, and security is kind of a big motivator to a lot of people. But what they really think is security, like maybe it's money in the bank, or maybe it's, having a nice house or something like that. Those things may not be that secure at all. Those might be just illusions of security. And those might be actually like an anchor that's keeping you from actually doing something that really is who you are. And it is really who you are that really secures you into, being somebody that's really valuable. And certainly, like connecting with the right people that,
Absolutely.
that give you a lot more security.
Absolutely. And sometimes people are stuck in a job, they have this crappy job that they hate. And over the years, they start to hate themselves and their lives and their wife and their children and everything around them and the city and their car and everything. And they're driving around swearing at everything and everybody. But in reality, like, even if they were poor, like, I remember at one time, my stepfather made a decision going from like a really posh job to going to a gardener in like a nursery. And at the time I was much younger and I was like, what are you doing? Like, that doesn't make sense. But now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, okay. And by the way, Mr. Listener, who was talking about the volume, I turned myself down, so that should help you out with the equalizing between myself and Mike. And that was a good suggestion, so thank you.
Okay, great.
um what was I talking about? Oh, yes.
Jobs,
Yeah,
giving up
being
jobs
stuck
and
in a
going.
job and thinking that your job is safety, right? Your job is safety. Is it though? Is it
Right.
safety or is it jail? Like,
Yeah.
and how much money we spend going to a job, like, you have to have the specific job clothes and you have to have the job going shoes because you're like in commute all day long, right? And you have to dress for the weather, and you have to um dress for the weather, and you have to wear the job appropriate clothing and replace it often, because otherwise you're not going to get a promotion if you're wearing old clothes, right?
Yeah.
And then, you might pay for lunch or for parking or whatever. And all of these expenses are really what keeps you at the job that's giving you enough money to support your job and to give you enough strength to actually go to work.
Yeah.
So the drastic step that you took and went to the jungle, that freed you from all of those extraneous expenses and gave you an opportunity to realize that, oh, all I need is some vegetables and some bread and maybe some meat every now and then. And
And
what
everything
do I
else
need?
is free.
There's water in the river. I,
I've got water. Don't feel like I'm going too hard on myself. I'm living pretty nice,
you know what?
honestly.
When Eric and I, when we lived in Montreal, we used to drive 3 hours into the mountains just to get water from the river to drink throughout the week. Every Sunday, this was our thing, even in the winter. We would get in the car on a Sunday morning and drive into the mountains and fill up all our bottles and drive back
Nice.
to town. And now there's no opportunity like that here on the island, so we get a guy to bring us water from that's actually from like an aquifer.
Hmm. That's interesting.
And Eric is also quoting Heinlein. So Robert A. Heinlein is one of my favorite writers, and he said this beautiful thing that most jobs keep you there and they give you just enough to so that you get enough energy to get the money, to get the food, to get the strength to go to work, to get the money, to get the food, to get the strength to go to work, to get the money, etc., 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 and
We're
forever.
on the perpetual treadmill to nowhere, honestly, in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. So what are our alternatives? What can we do? How can we achieve our dreams without getting a haircut and getting a real job?
Well, that's what we're talking about. Is that self-discovery, is, identifying the values that we have, that is, getting rid of the baggage that comes along with all this kind of stuff that we think we need to live in this crazy world that has all these crazy ideas about what we should buy and what we should wear and what we should say and do. All these kind of things are really things that can be questioned, and we should question them.
Did you see that skirt? Oh my gosh, she actually wore a skirt like that. And what how bored does one have to be to worry about a skirt someone else is wearing?
I don't know, but it's a lot of the things that are led in our society are essentially these things that are conditioned, and really looking at what the alternative to the way that people view the world it is. You got to step away from it, of course, to even kind of come to some conclusion. But I think I think one of the things that both of us have in regard to our experience is one in which we've been in different cultures. And I think that does do a lot to, like when you get introduced to different cultures, you start to see that people do things differently in different places. And then the things that we thought meant something don't really mean anything at all. It's just some crazy thing that somebody thought up and it became a habit. And now everybody's doing it. And because of that, that's the way it's done there. But really, that doesn't necessarily have to be that way.
It's
And I
kind of
think for a lot of people that have never left where they come from, or kind of always been stuck in one culture, it's hard to really fathom what else could be possible. But
well,
there's a
it's like
lot.
families, right? If your family is the kind that really expresses really loudly, vocally, like an Italian or a Polish family, or maybe an Irish family, like really energetic, you might
Mhm.
think that all families are like that until you find out otherwise, right? And so until you find out otherwise, that is the only way to communicate. That's how you communicate. If somebody says something that pisses you off, you just like raise your voice, and that's how you communicate. How many people grow up like that, and then when they become adults, they're like, oh, there are different ways of communicating in families. Other people communicate differently. And then suddenly that becomes possible, and then, oh, well, maybe yelling isn't the best way of communicating. Maybe I can start communicating by speaking or by asking questions.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Well,
and
I
it's the
think
same thing about how to do work. Go ahead, sorry.
well, I was just going to say that the thing that kind of keeps everybody on the same page is the movies and the television shows and stuff like that, and that's kind of what the norm is, and everything else is outside the norm. But who said the television people were right? Who said the guys in the movies were right about how people are
Because
supposed
that's
to
how
interact?
Polish people supposed to live. A Polish
Mhm.
person is strong and they can carry a sword that weighs twice as much as them, and they eat a dozen eggs for breakfast, and they can slay an enemy even in a tank with a sword, or maybe even in a size.
No, and that's how they got
It's national
the.
pride.
Yeah, well, but I think that's the thing is that unfortunately, because of technology and stuff, more people are relying on these false ideals about what society and what people are supposed to do and how they're supposed to think, and it's just becoming more and more crazy than what is really kind of comes natural to people and what should be natural in regard to like being curious and being able to not fear things like failure or even
But
success.
you can't not fear failure because the school tells you that failure is the worst thing that can happen to you. I mean, oh my gosh, what if you get an F? Like, what if you try something and it doesn't succeed? Like that whole, like I know it's not the same as school. In school, there are parameters, and in the real world, there are no parameters. But in reality, you're trained to go, oh no, oh what if I get an F? What if I fail? Everybody's gonna laugh at me.
Right.
One time, So one time I had this like fear thing, and oh, I'm not, never gonna. Oh, it was a self-employed thing at the very beginning, before I was even doing marketing or anything. I just graduated from coaching school, and I was like, well, how can I like so that I wouldn't have a job and there wouldn't be a paycheck, and then no, how would that work? I don't even know. Like, I could never succeed. I could never work. Like, you can't even imagine it succeeding. So how do you
Yeah.
get from there to actually being self-employed?
Yeah, it is one in which you definitely have to learn how to fail and how to build on failure, because it is one in which you're going to have to learn a lot of different things, and unfortunately, a lot of people are afraid of being shamed, or the fears, or the guilt, or all the other things that could go wrong. But the reality is that it's not really that bad. I think for me, being in the military was one in which I like try and break you down to your absolute basic. And when they're doing that, you get to the point that you just say, you know what, all I can do is do the best that I can. And if that's not good enough, well, that's just too bad. That's all I can do. And when you get to that point, that's a really good feeling, honestly, if you ask me, because being able to just say, you know what, all I can do is just do the best that I can, and that's what I'm going to do.
It's
And I think that's really kind of the building point to like getting through life in a way that really um, prepare yourself for a lot of things that might go wrong, but
yeah.
you're just going to do the
You
best that
know,
you can.
thinking back to the times when I was afraid to be, step away from the cookie cutter. I remember some of the fears that I had. Like, I was really proud of the fact that I'd never been fired. I was like, well, see, that means I'm a good person. I've never been fired. No one ever thought I was so shitty that they fired me. People like always
Yeah,
tolerated me enough to give me money. So wasn't that good? And then, and even like now, from my current perspective, even thinking about that is like, okay, so maybe I didn't take enough risks. Maybe the reason I didn't get fired is because I wasn't really gung ho about any of the jobs I had, and I just sort of obediently went in the proper stall on the right lineup.
yeah. Well, one of my values is collaboration, and that's really a kind of a mix between cooperation and individual assertiveness. You know, and if you maximize both of those, you get collaboration. And for me, that is something that I think a lot of people have a hard time with, either one or the other. They're either good at cooperating, or they're good at being assertive about how they feel about things, but they're not both. And so, like, being able to do those and see that, okay, I need to work on that. In some cases, it is one in which you've got like one that's assertive and one that's cooperative, and they kind of help each other
Like the
to.
six of us are doing in this group, we're helping
Yeah,
each other
absolutely,
figure out
absolutely.
stuff.
But collaboration is where the real rubber meets the road and things really get done. And you know, we like to think that there are individuals that do make
Hi,
all the things
Sabra.
happen,
Sorry, shout
but
out shout out to Sabra. She's been typing to us,
okay, awesome.
saying that in the past there were a lot of tears and very few hugs, but look where we are now. So that's true.
Yeah.
But it's
Well, and
about
I
it's
think
about
this, but
creating that image and stepping toward that dream that you have, right?
yeah, well, and that's the other thing, is that we can look back too. We can actually look back to the people we were in the past, and see, like, what could we have done better when we were back in at 20 years old or 30 years old, and made our lives a lot easier by just accepting that this knowledge is correct, and that that's the way we should do it, or that what our values are these, and we should have stuck more solidly to them instead of like, I'll give up on my value and maybe I'll go take this crappy job, to get some money or whatever it was that made, then you find out, oh, that was like a 5-year detour that really just taught me I should have been more, strong in believing
But maybe
myself.
it taught you the skills that you needed to continue the 5 year
Yeah, that's
detour.
that's true. That's true. But
Um,
that's one of those things. That's why it's so dang valuable is that we learn that lesson. And if we had to bleed, sweat, and cry for 5 years to get to the point that we understood that value, then we should definitely hook that value into our future and make that a something that we will not you know push down.
yeah, I remember this session I had when I was first thinking about being self-employed, or I was first self-employed. I had a session with my friend Lisa Nazrin. Shout out to Lisa. And she kept asking me questions. Like, I would say, "Oh, I'm scared of starting a business," and she said, "Okay, so you're scared of starting a business. So if you were to start a business, then what? Then what would happen?" And we went down this then what would happen path, and then I would be like, well, what if I fail? Okay, so if you were to fail your business, then what would happen? Well, what if I didn't have any money to pay the rent? Okay, so if you didn't have enough money to pay the rent, then what would happen, right? Well, then I wouldn't have a place to live. Is that really true? Okay, but say you didn't have a place to live, then what would happen, right? And in the end, my logic thing was that if I were to start my own business and not go back to work for somebody else, I would end up starving cold under a bridge somewhere. That was a direct connection. So like
Yeah,
I completely bypassed the fact that I have friends and family who would support me if I were ever to get into trouble, that I was married at the time, you know what I mean? Like all of these things, that was not really a factor because I was like, oh no, I can't start a business because you know what? I would be kicked out of the tribe. I would be kicked out of the village. I would be in the forest and a saber-toothed tiger would come and eat me up.
yeah. Well, in regard to that, like what I was saying before about collaboration, like as you feel like you're strong, you're more, your individual assertiveness is starting to get stronger. You also have to like raise the bar when it comes to cooperating with other people as well. And that's also, kind of the way to understand that, like you were saying, these other people that are in my life that can like be my support structure that can help me when things go wrong, when maybe I fail. But they're also there that they can help you, to like solve the problems before they become a big problem.
But then there is also that voice that says, what kind of a loser are you that you need help? Like, what, you can't handle taking
well,
care of yourself? What's wrong with you? How old are you again? What are you, 12? Get over it. You know, that Polish hockey coach thing inside my head?
well, again, I think that this is another area that I think a lot of people are kind of, really low. The value of the amount of good communication that people actually can have with each other is probably pretty low in comparison to what the potential is. And again, it's one in which we've got to work. We got to work on it. We got to work on these skills that we have, and certainly one of those also is being able to communicate with other people to really get clear about who we are, what we value, and then be able to express that to other people in a way that they can actually understand it too. Because in a lot of ways, I think, and like we were talking about the other day, the guy that goes out and asks people like ridiculous questions, and people actually try and help, that should give us a clue that, a lot of people really in reality will try and help you if you just ask. And it's unfortunate how few people ask.
It's like that thing that when there's a natural disaster, like a lot of Hollywood movies would make us think that if there's a natural disaster, people will, turn on each other. They're gonna start hoarding weapons and food and shooting each other. But in reality, in my experience, what I've seen happen during a natural disaster is that people really rally together. They
Right.
absolutely share everything, and everybody's looking out for each other. And if any one person is in trouble, there are people there to help them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, in my 47 years of experience, I would say that the Hollywood movies are wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's like one of the things that I think a lot of people have wrong when it comes to human nature. You know, they always say, "Oh, yeah, we do this, we do that, we do." Well, when they're saying we, they're not saying you and me. They're trying to associate us all with some kind of something else
But who
that
knows if
isn't
they would
really
actually
us.
do it? If they were actually in trouble, if there were actually people there who needed help, they would probably just help them anyway. Even the people that are saying, "Oh, I'll hoard food," no, da 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 da.
Right. Yeah,
Most
in a
of
lot
them,
of
some
different.
would, but no, not most.
Well, I think and I think that's a whole misconception because I think most people really have valuable things to offer. We don't know, that guy that's floating down the river might be the guy that understands, like, how to build the next nuclear power plant, or even better than the next nuclear power plant. And maybe we should save that guy because he could save the environment for the entire planet. We don't necessarily know who has got what. And so it's always in our best interest to kind of think, you know what, maybe we shouldn't kill that guy. Maybe we should keep him alive.
Well, just being
And
kind to each other. I would rather, not survive an event where I am kind to people than survive by being an asshole.
yeah,
I mean, I'm a
yeah,
proponent. I like to be an asshole to a certain degree, like just to like give a little shock value, or maybe just a little wake up call. But it would be an actual asshole to people.
all right. Well, I'm going to give you a chance to talk about the story that you were talking about earlier before
Oh,
we
that
went on.
story. There's a
Do you
lot of
want to do you
interesting
want to do
things.
that?
Sure, yeah, I'll do that. Maybe I'll
Okay.
do a short version and see.
Okay.
So, so this is like an ancient story from years and years and years, like hundreds of years ago, right, in Europe. And it's a story about adventure, a quest, having a goal in mind, and keeping your eye on that goal. So pay attention. Anyway, so there was this old woman, old widow, and she had three sons, three grown sons. And one day she fell ill, and nobody could cure her. Like, she tried the doctor in the nearby town, she tried the village witch, she tried everybody, and nobody could help her. But the village witch said one thing that was interesting. She said that if somebody were to find the water of life for her, and the water of life was located forests across 7 forests, forging 7 rivers, climbing 7 mountains, and at the end there was a glass mountain, and on the top of this glass mountain there was a little spring, and in that spring there was the water of life. And so people apparently got this water of life, but nobody really knew how or when. And nobody really knew anybody who's ever come back from this quest before. But the village witch, the healing lady, she said that that was the only way that she knew of that would help the mother. So the oldest son decided to go, and he forged the 7 rivers, he crossed the 7 forests, climbed the 7 mountains, and he was almost at the foot of this mountain, like the glass mountain, where he had to climb to get the water of life. And he ran into this beggar guy, right, sitting under a tree, poor old man, so old that you couldn't even recognize how old he could possibly be. He was just super old. And this beggar said, I'll tell you what you need to know if you give me half your lunch. And the young man said, I need my strength, I need my lunch, I'm climbing mountains here, give me a break. And he walked away. And he went up the glass mountain, and halfway through, something happened, and he was never heard from again. So back to the village, they're waiting for him and waiting for him. Finally, the second son's like, okay, we're not going to wait long enough for mother to die, I'm going to go. So again, the same story. He forged the 7 rivers, crossed the 7 forests, climbed the 7 mountains, met the old man, and the same thing happened. He was like, no, man, I'm not going to share my lunch with you. Like, you're an old man sitting under a tree. What could you possibly know? Like, seriously. And besides, I need my strength. Go to hell. So then, again, never heard from again. So then the youngest son is like, okay, I'm going. And his mother's like, come on, seriously, if you go, no one's going to be here to bury me. He's like, no, I'm going. So then he goes, he takes his little bundle of lunch, and he goes, he crosses all the 7 rivers, 7 forests, 7 mountains, and then he runs into the beggar. And he looks at the beggar, and before the beggar can even say anything, he goes, buddy, you look like you need some lunch. Here, let me share my lunch with you. And the beggar said, well, if you share your lunch with me, I'll tell you what you need to know. And he said, sure, man, sounds good. So he sits down beside the beggar. He shares his lunch. He has no expectations, really. And then the beggar goes, you know what? That glass mountain that you're going to, because you're going up the glass mountain, right? And the kid says, yeah, I am. He goes, there's this thing. It's cursed, right? So what happens is when you start walking up the mountain, about halfway through, there are these voices that sound behind you. It sounds like there's a great big beast that's going to eat you up right behind you. You can even hear its breathing in your ears. But it's not really there. But the second you turn around, you turn into like a stone. And that's it. So that's why nobody ever comes back from this quest, because they get scared by this beastly sound. They turn around and they turn into stone. He's like, but I'll tell you another thing. If you do make it to the top and you get that water of life thing, you can put a drop of that stuff on every one of those stones you see on the way down, and that'll revive them. He goes, okay, that's interesting. So he's like, so how do I deal with this water of life thing? Like, how do the curse thing? He goes, and the old man says, I have this bit of wax in my pocket here. I'll give it to you. Just shove it in your ears really tight, and you won't hear anything. And you can go up the mountain and keep your eye on the top of the mountain where you're going, and you're going to get the water of life. So the kid does as the old man says, goes up the mountain. He doesn't hear anything, so he's never scared, but he did see a lot of weird statues on the way up, like people in all these different positions and stuff, all of them like, you know what I mean? And so and so he goes and he gets the water of life, and he fills out his little canteen that he was planning to fill up with water of life. And he comes down, and on the way down, he puts a little drop on every single statue. And then, like, halfway down the mountain, he's got a whole procession behind him. His 2 brothers. There was a king. One of the kings was so grateful that he rescued that he was going to give him his daughter and half his kingdom in marriage. So by the time he got down the mountain, he was rich. he had possessions, and then he had enough water of life left to cure his mother too at the very end. So, what do you learn from that?
So the moral of the story is,
what is the moral of the story?
Don't get distracted, and don't think of yourself too much that you can't give half your lunch to somebody else because they actually need them.
And if somebody says, hey, I have information, at least listen to them, because maybe they know more than you think.
Yeah, well, it's definitely valuing other people's, or looking to other people for value.
We don't have to follow what they say, but we can at least hear them out, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, keep an eye on the water.
That was a great story. I
Thank
really appreciate you telling me.
Oh, wait, we have a fallacy. Let's see if this works.
So let's get to the logic of fallacy.
I apologize if a different picture shows up. I'm not really sure how to do this. I'm learning. Okay. Oh, that was yesterday. Never give up. Hey, that's good for my story. Never give up. The little frog choking the stork. That's what it is. Okay, and the fallacy of the week is appeal to, what was it? Why don't you want to wear a party hat when everyone is wearing one? Appeal to group? I forget what the actual fallacy name is. But it's basically forcing somebody to do.
Look it up now.
Appeal to groupthink? Appeal to mob mentality? No, probably not. In any case, on this picture, I'm just going to describe it for you. You're probably getting it. We had it in the chat. There are all these little birds that are wearing party hats, and the one little bird is not wearing a party hat, and the other bird says to him, why don't you want to wear a party hat when everyone else is wearing one? So basically, if everybody jumps off a bridge,
Yeah. It's the appeal to bandwagon. That's what it
Bandwagon. That's what it was. Appeal to the bandwagon.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and that's a very strong one. There's a lot of people they could fall for that logical fallacy. It's it's very unfortunate, but very
yeah.
well used, and see it all the
Don't
time.
fall for it. Don't fall for it. If somebody says do this because everyone else is doing it, use your own judgment.
Now, with that said, and let's see, you want to talk about what we're going to talk about next week?
I'm
Because
not
I'm not
really
going to be
sure.
here.
Well, okay, so yeah, we'll take over for you. That's not a problem. But I'm not really sure what Tim's next step is. Now, I'll tell you what I
Well,
do
I can
know.
tell you.
Oh, you
I
can
do
tell
know.
me? Okay, you tell me.
It's projection.
Oh.
You, you have some inclination of what he's trying to point at when he says projection?
Yeah. I'll tell you a
Okay,
story
tell
about
us.
projection. So, this is back when I was married with my first husband, long time ago.
Okay.
And I used to be frustrated about some things he did, but I wouldn't talk to him about that. What I would talk to him about is garbage. Oh my God, you didn't take out the garbage. What the heck were you thinking? Do I have to do everything around here? It was never about the garbage.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's
Mhm.
what Tim meant. We'll have to check
So,
with him on Sunday.
so how does that relate to projection? Let me make
You're
sure we get.
projecting? I don't know. Maybe that was transference. I think we
I'm
need
thinking
Tim.
like kind of, yeah, like maybe
Oh,
putting it
like
on out where other people can see.
manifestation?
Yeah, maybe that kind of thing.
Maybe,
I'm
maybe.
not
I guess
sure.
it's gonna be a mystery for everybody until we meet on Sunday. But we have something
That's a good
cool
thing.
planned out for the weeks after we finish Tim's course. So we're about to finish Tim's course in a week or two, I think, maybe three. And then after that, what we're gonna do is we're going to focus on different team members for a whole week, so that way we're going to introduce a new exercise and learn a little bit more about each team member, and then we're going to all participate in the exercise that team member brings to the table.
Yeah,
So yeah, that should be
yeah,
fun in the next few weeks.
yeah. And that's kind of what what we're trying to do through this exercise as well. Not only are we trying to help our audience improve their own self and create their own self-discovery and go through the motions, but also learn a little bit more about ourselves, each of us, as we kind of demonstrate this in front of everybody else.
Oh, and it's
And
been
hopefully,
invaluable. For
yeah,
me, it's been invaluable. Doing all the exercises, following every week, has been
yeah,
amazing. I've learned so much about myself. Every week, I learn new stuff about myself.
yeah. I'm not looking forward to skipping next week. I'll tell you that much. So I'm
But you're
gonna have
doing
to.
other stuff, so you're good. You're good. We'll take care of it. No worries. Maybe we should get somebody to guest host for you, like Chris McMillan or somebody.
I don't know. Maybe we can do that. All right. Well, with that said, do you have any last comments that you want to
No, I think we're
throw out there
good.
before you leave?
We're
Well,
good. We can wrap it up for today. See you,
okay.
everybody, on Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Are you going to about
Yeah.
to say that? Go ahead. You say it now.
Well, I was going to say that, and I was also going to thank everybody for their time and attention. It's certainly, a real honor for those of you that are watching us to take the time to listen to what we've got to say. Hopefully, it's useful information. And if not, let us know what we can do better. We're always trying to improve. This is called Raising Excellence for a reason. We want to constantly improve this product and constantly improve your life. And that's really what this is all about, is trying to make the most of this time for us as well as for you. And
Perfect.
so with that said, thanks a lot. Have a
Thank you,
wonderful day,
everybody.
wonderful weekend. And
All
oh,
right.
stay tuned for, are we going to do a face reading this week for you?
Yeah, we should definitely have some space reading. It didn't work out last week, but we might have two this week. So we'll
Okay.
see. Stay tuned.
So look
It'll
out
be a
for maybe a
surprise.
face reading as well.
All
All right,
right.
guys.
Thanks,
Thanks a lot.
everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye.